Welcome back to Conversations with Caregivers, where we honor the visionaries, healers, and innovators that are pushing our community forward towards health and care. I'm your host, Kylan Askew. I'm a health tech innovator and the co-founder of Creato. Conversations with Caregivers isn't just healthcare professionals. There are everyday leaders holding space for healing, for justice, and generational change. From doulas and doctors, community organizers, and health tech founders, these are people shaping the future of care. Today's guest sits squarely at the intersection of technology and justice, pioneering a future where we each own our own health journey. Chrissa McFarlane, I have to read the bio full out because we are
Yeah.
honored to have today's guest here with us today. Chrissa McFarlane is the founder and CEO of Patientory, a groundbreaking company that's reimagining health data through blockchain, AI, and fintech. Patientory is building the first blockchain-secured digital health wallet and AI platform, empowering individuals to own their health data while helping employers and payers cut costs. Chrissa McFarlane has been recognized by Forbes as one of the top 50 women in tech, and she's shaping a world where privacy, prevention, and empowerment are the norm, not the exception. Chrissa, we're so excited to have you here today, and let's get into it.
Thank you for the invite, Kylan. Happy to be here with you.
So let's start at the very beginning. I know that it's not easy to start any type of company. So what was the reason that you got started in health tech specifically?
So my experiences in my entire career has always been in healthcare. I started out in microbiome research in New York City at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Wanted to be a practicing physician. But my parents were all, immigrants from the Caribbean and they are entrepreneurs. So I was oftentimes, in my father's restaurants, taking it all in and just, traveling around with him wherever he went. So I always had this passion for business. It wasn't until I went to college, went to Cornell, that I took a life science and entrepreneurship class. And I was like, wow, there's something beyond, right? Just being a practicing physician, treating patients, but there's a business of it. That's when I went into pretty much like a part-time internship at Cayuga Medical Center and developed some community programs there. The executive director for one of the foundations created that position, and I got the opportunity to actually build something. And I loved it. I ended up going to business school, was focused on healthcare consulting and IT management, got my takeout in North Carolina, working with a pharma company in the consultant space. And it wasn't until I got asked to help build a telemedicine company. Um, you see this Cornell theme. It was an alumna. She had just raised her seed round and asked me to come on and manage her insurance product that I fell in love with digital health and the whole tech innovation space. And based on my background and skills and what I saw and where I saw the challenges, especially personally, having my dad misdiagnosed with a chronic disease, that spun up the idea for Patientory and essentially putting all my experiences and skill sets together into something that I can give back.
Yeah. Wow. What a journey. And just for my frame of reference and for viewers' frame of reference, about how long was that experience from when you started at Cornell to starting Patientory? How many years was that?
Yeah, yeah. So from when I started at Cornell to start in Patientory, wow, it was 8 years.
Okay. Yeah, they say 10 years is what it takes. So you were right on the cusp.
Yeah, yeah. So like that from, experience going through college, then going to business school, having those real world experiences took about 8 years.
Wow. Okay, that's helpful to know. I think we oftentimes in like finding things and starting things up get misconstrued with speed and like we think it's going to be overnight
No,
and just these
it's not
experiences are supposed to
overnight.
take us there. Yeah. So that's good to know that you had the actual like lived experience like built you to where you were or where you are to start Patientory.
I was gonna say you see it with like, entrepreneurship where, you have the very young entrepreneur, but then most successful entrepreneurs, they don't come up with their idea until they're like in their 50s. We see with like Martha Stewart, and the likes. So it takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, in getting started, what about your background gave you the confidence to go out on your own? Or even before you went out on your own, the confidence to start building your own programs with Cayuga Health and then navigate into doing something on your own?
Yeah, I think it was born out of frustration, seeing the lack of resources, especially for minority groups. And in a sense, I was doing that at this nonprofit, right? Building this foundation, but then seeing on how current tech wasn't built for, the status quo for individuals. EMRs pretty much took over, right, as the healthcare platform, which didn't really include patients. So there, we saw a lot of exclusivity with especially how our current American healthcare system is built. So I think just seeing that frustration, knowing that, I've been privy to seeing how it all works, was that driving force.
Yeah, and what did that feel like? You mentioned that your father also experienced a misdiagnosis that kind of
Yeah.
influenced that. I can imagine that was like really heavy to bring that energy to then creating something.
Yeah, and it was out of frustration, really, and it was like, okay, this is America, a developed country, we shouldn't be making these mistakes. And then when I started the company, I found even in my friends group, I had a friend that was diagnosed with lupus. She had a challenge just managing all her health data. And I was like, it's much closer to me than I thought it was.
Yeah. That phrase, it's much closer to me than I thought it was, is so real because it's true. And I think until you're sitting in that driver's seat of starting your own thing, you don't realize how many like problems that the society just like kind of embarks, I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Imposes on
Yeah.
you, how real and relevant a lot of these things and experiences are. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's start talking about Patientory a little bit itself. So, can you give me a quick explanation on the system, the problem that you're solving, and how you're solving it?
Yeah, so when I first started Patientory, there were so many APIs, application programming interfaces that were like, yeah, we're going to plug into the electronic health record and transfer information. And there were so many out there, we didn't want to be another API. So when I started Patientory, it was something that I always wanted the patient to manage, the patient to control, and the patient to own that customer journey. It wasn't until about almost a year in I came across like blockchain and Bitcoin and what it was doing, and I was like, because we were running up against just security issues, how are we storing data, architecture, infrastructure, all of that stuff. And I was like, this makes sense. Patients need a system where they feel as if they can store their data and it's safe, right? And it's not beholden to an entity or a company. And I was like, this is what we need as our infrastructure, as like our backbone. So we went out, I wrote a white paper around building a blockchain healthcare infrastructure for patient data. That was completed in, yeah, I believe the spring of 2017. And, at the time we were raising funds, we were doing our initial pre-seed. We came up against, this is too early for us with investors, as you know, or when I talked about it, it's like I had like five heads, right? It was just something that went over people's heads. So I had an advisor that I brought on because he was in the blockchain space, who he at the time had also written a white paper around decentralized storage, like how we're accessing like cloud storage, and contributed to like Ethereum, which is like one of the popular crypto tokens out there. And they've crowdfunded. They did a what we call now a token sale, but they crowdfunded their first investments um, on that white paper. And I was like, oh, this is a great way. we can actually build this infrastructure. And infrastructure now that I'm looking at it, it would probably take like $30 million to build, right? Um, so we were successful there. Our goal was 10 million, which we did. Ended up raising over seven with like discounts and the whole, marketing and everything that goes into that process. So we went out and we built it. We built a global health data network that now is integrated in the US health system. And that's how we power our application, right? Our Patientory app for individuals to store and access their health data.
Oh my gosh. Let's please just take a minute for how huge that is. Said, yeah, I wrote a white paper and then I used it to raise $10 million. Are you kidding? That's amazing.
That was 2018. Yeah, we were on the verge, and I was the first one. We were the world's first healthcare cryptocurrency, the world's first healthcare blockchain. We were really at the cutting edge and pioneering in the space. And at the time, I was like, yeah, this is great. We're going to change the world overnight. But again, especially in healthcare, adoption takes at least 10 years, right? You can have the technology is there, but then it's like, okay, how do we get around not only regulatory, but just the mindsets and the social adoption needed. But it was big. It was an exciting time. It was about a year and a half after I started the company. Um, and we were just on fire, but it was a fun time.
What did that feel like? So, did you ever experience any imposter syndrome during that moment, or you were like, I'm built for this and I'm going to kind of take what's mine here?
Yeah, it was always like because I feel like I had gotten so many rejections, and I'm like, yes, this is like what I knew I was saying all along, right? Look at me now, kind of thing. Like I know what I'm talking about. I've lived this. I can do this. I can build this thing. So it was more of, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take it.
Yeah. I'm obsessed. Was it ever hard for you navigating this space as someone not explicitly in healthcare? So, if you didn't have like an MD, was your credibility ever questioned along that
Yeah.
journey?
Yeah, I would say to an extent, but I being in the tech ecosystem and startup space, coming from a telemedicine company that was run by an MD and he literally obliterated the company. I came to believe the saying that, doctors aren't good business people,
Mm,
right? Having an MD doesn't mean that you can run a business at
right.
all. And I felt that all businesses are the same, regardless of like the industry. The goal is to make a profit, right? Drive revenues. Where I feel like doctors are trained to treat people.
Mhm.
Um, in a sense, I feel like people who weren't as sophisticated would always question, oh, you're not a nurse or you're not a physician, why are you building a healthcare company? Um, But it's like saying, it's like questioning the CEO of a hospital or an admin of a hospital. They actually keep the lights on, right? And as we've seen in Atlanta, we've gotten almost like two hospitals already closed down, which partly because they were probably like physician owned and physician ran. So, I think the heart of what we're doing is it is in healthcare because we are doing a healthcare service and just coming from the telehealth world, managing the telemedicine company, managing the doctors, like they were the ones providing the service. But at the end of the day, we were in the back end, making sure that the company was driving in the right direction, right? And that we met the needs of the customer. So at a point, I never really thought about that, switching from, wanting to practice. It was not something that I really wanted to do. It was more of an achievement. I like you say, like a credibility stamp that I know healthcare. Um, but then having these experiences, seeing the work I've done in the industry, um, gave me that confidence that I can build the system.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you said two really important gems in the last like two responses. One being, as someone else in the health tech space, that I'm waiting too long to fundraise. And two, not falling victim to the fact that you are not a medical doctor because medical doctors are not business people. I think those
Right.
are two really strong gems for this like health innovation space because I think it's really important to have clinical expertise as someone like influencing the end result of the product. But in terms of like driving the bottom line and revenue and partnerships and growth, you really can't expect a practicing physician to know how to do all of that well in addition to treating patients.
Exactly, exactly. You summed it up real clear. I think we need to like write a blog about this, like a blog post about this. Like expectations of digital health
Yeah.
founders.
When you were, and even still till today, how did you go about like building your support system? Whether that, it's a two-pronged question. So your support system for Patientory and supporting the go-to-market and growth of the product, but then also the support system for Chrissa the human and navigating these complex spaces and conversations and rejections that, how did you kind of talk about and socialize like, hey, I need some support in these spaces?
Yeah, yeah. And I think early on I was like heads down. I was doing everything. Like I lived in a hacker house in San Francisco, with a house with like 10 other entrepreneurs and coders and developers, community. So for me, my underlying thing was always being in community with like-minded people and another, people that were on a journey and building something. Whether I grew out of that community and moved to a next one, it was always like that common theme of having community. Same thing that, now like I met you, Kylan, through Lyft, like being a part of that community. Um, it's about the shared experiences and also just being able to, keep myself accountable mentally, and socially. I think me attending like different conferences, I pitched a lot as well. I came up upon, people that were intrigued by what I was building, who became advisors, who became mentors. I never, denied or shied away from participating on panels, even if I wasn't paid. In the beginning, it was like great exposure for me, and that's how I got, my name out. So I think it was a mix of that, just being open to new connections and networking, as part of building my community, right? And building that tribe.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. And then, so my last question, kind of as it relates to Patientory specifically, now that you are a few years into your journey, how has your approach changed, or is it changing? What is the phase of the life cycle that you're at currently?
Yeah, I think now that I'm looking at it, because we were pretty much first on this emerging tech bell curve, you have this hype, funding, yay, everyone is like new shiny tech, and then it kind of goes into this trough of disillusionment. I have to build it. Is it built correctly? Do I have the right stack? Am I solving a needed problem in the market? Who are my customers? Product market fit, all of these things. Like, am I the one, founder, disillusionment? And I think now we're kind of like breaking out of that cycle. We have a product that, that was once a white paper. Now it's in a physical product. And now, we have some product market fit, some traction. And it's like now, okay, how do we generate this into a well-oiled system, right? Who is paying for it? How do we get into our customers and really show them the problem, so that they bite it, right? I think that's where we are now because, all roads are leading to AI. We're having these initiatives that are kind of converging to the platform that we've built. I think we were, you know, I don't think we're early. I just think we're on time. So it's like going through those growing pains. Now for us, our focus is all on go to market, go to market. Okay, like, how can we go to market as fast as possible, as lean as possible, um, with limited resources and limited budgets. We've been pretty much, successful in really gaining interest, and insights from other countries as well and other governments. So really prioritizing, how do we grow as a company without getting too burnt out?
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I know a little bit about your recent international experiences, but I would love to know a little bit more about how you've been seeing Patient Tori grow internationally as well.
I always went in with this global mindset, that we were building a global company, especially because we're tied to cryptocurrency, which is supposed to be cross-border. It's supposed to be global and international. So really seeing the adoption and the reception outside of the US was such a driving force, and it's just more validation for what we're building and what we've developed. Um, again, dealing with challenges here in the US as a minority Black female founder.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in healthcare in today's day
Yes.
and age.
Yes. Yeah, I had an investor recently. I did an investor pitch, and I had the investor look at me and say, "You don't look like someone that would have so much experience, because I look so young." And it's like, wait till you get to my age. So it's like always this like skepticism.
Yes. And I'm like, is that a compliment or
Right.
So I want to transition a little bit into talking about leadership because I think in doing all that you've done, especially in healthcare, as we were just mentioning, it requires a tremendous amount of confidence and the ability to lead teams and supporters, boards, etc., to like create a shared vision and have a campaign that you're championing that other people can buy into. So as you've been a leader in this space for over a decade, what has been your biggest takeaway or learning about what it takes to really lead a team?
Yeah, I would say persistence, grit, and just confidence in who you are. I've led some really great teams along the way with projects that we have within the company, and not so great teams, right? That would challenge you, that may lead into like legal battles, etc. And I think the end of the day is like they're all learning experiences. But going back, being able to be reflective and go back to my core of why am I doing this and my guiding, North Star always helped me to put things into perspective and to get back on track.
Absolutely. And in having this partly leadership, partly the industry today, when you think about AI and how you're communicating to your team and to your customers ultimately, has the conversation changed at all that you've had to inform on safety, reliability, and trust that you're building? Have there been more questions in today's world about the data, the privacy, the consent that you're working with?
Yeah, I've actually gotten more questions. Prior to this, like that was pretty much why I started the company, and we led with that because we were building a Web3 blockchain decentralized solution. So at the core of it, it was always around this notion of trust, right? Consent, and security. So now that I get asked more, it's like, okay, well, we want you to ask that question because this is why we built this. This is what our platform is built for, to really ensure that trust, and immutability, auditability, are some of the key, themes that are presented in, having a blockchain solution. I think blockchain and Web3 has died down. It was a buzzword a couple of years ago. Um, but, being able to withstand when a lot of our peers have decided to move on to other things, I think it just says a lot. And it proves that, we're building something worthwhile.
Mhm. How has having to pivot, if you've had really to pivot up until this point, was that met with frustration again or open arms?
Yeah, I think the vision has always been the same. We haven't really pivoted. I think we've just refined our messaging, which I think is really cool because we started out with this great, big, grand, kind of messaging and idea. We didn't really state like who we were selling to, who was it for. I think that people that saw us like way back and then see us today, they're like, oh wow. they see there's like a light bulb moment that happens for them. Um, so that it's exciting to see that when they can really see something tangible that has been produced from what we've done.
Mhm. And then I'm curious, so you are well aware, all of the innovation that's happening with artificial intelligence is absolutely happening within the healthcare sector as well. What are you hoping to see come out of this boom, and what are you looking forward to ultimately?
Yeah. I just saw a post that said OpenAI just shut down 1 billion startups. And it's like at the end of the day, we still need people to manage processes, to implement, to sell, right? I don't think, who's going to have to sell, different solutions, and companies are still going to have problems. People are still going to have problems. I don't think AI is an end all be all. I think it's more of an integration that can help us, be better at what we do. And I think the best companies are the ones that have, departments in place and actual, um, mission and vision goals set around the use of AI rather than just trying to replace everything with AI.
Right. And what would you tell a patient about their data as it relates to using a health tech solution as someone who's using data in healthcare?
I would say for me now, I think we are going through a revolution. Not only in tech, the internet, as we also see in like politics and the government. I think, we have an opportunity to, especially in this country where people freely give up their information, right? And access. You go to Europe, they have GDPR, you have to sign all these things to log in and, approve all these things to log into the internet. So there is a different mindset here in the US. I think we have an opportunity to shift that to where people especially, are feeling more empowered. Um, Especially as we, deal with challenges in the economy. Um, and infrastructures that are incentivizing, that are creating value for the consumer. I think that's going to be our future.
So overall, you would say you're net positive on the impact of technology in healthcare.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I mean, we're looking at healthcare, I would say we're still one of the industries that lag. I joke that healthcare is still in the 80s because we still fax. So I think any incremental shift is a net positive for healthcare.
So, in our last few minutes together, I wanted to spend some time talking about you specifically. So, at Creato, we spend a lot of time pouring back. We use the word caregivers when we even opened this segment, pouring back into the people who are helping the world. So, it's like what that looks like is how are we helping our doctors, our doulas, our community caregivers to also take care of themselves so that they can
Mhm.
provide better care. So, I'm curious, do you have a self-care practice? And if you do, what does it look like?
Yes, I do. I integrate that because it's like as a founder, you have the highs and lows on a day-to-day basis. But I'm a big fan of self-care. I do whether that's massages, facials, just exercise, There's a class I just signed up for, Mind Body 360, where it integrates like yoga, Pilates, you know body weight movements. Um, and it's supposed to help rejuvenate. So exercise is another big one. And then just taking breaks. It's great to go on vacation and just, refresh your mindset. I find that when I do that and come back, it's like, okay, now I can go and do 110%. So that's another big one. And then just practicing, mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah. And is that something that you have always had a practice of, or you've had to learn over the years that, hey, I need to actually take a minute for myself, and this is what I need to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I actually started that, in the latter end of my university years after seeing like just how stressful it was. I started, I'm really big in like Christianity and faith as well. So I started out with like journaling and doing like these. daily journal quotes, which led me more, and started out with yoga, which led me more into, that practice of meditation and looking at certain retreats.
Mhm.
I think, just going through my career, that self-care has grown as I started to take on more responsibilities.
Right. Like it has had to.
Yeah, yeah.
Question, as a fellow Cornell grad, one, how was your experience? And do you think the rigor of that type of institution kind of prepared you for what you're doing today?
Yeah, if anything, I would say I'm grateful because it did prepare me for that. Even from the rejection, I remember doing an honors thesis and it got rejected like literally like 2 months before graduation. And I had to like redo it, re-pitch and really plead to the advisor. My advisor had left. He went back to Africa.
Oh,
So I had
wow.
like a new board. So it's like, all these disappointments kind of like led to that tenacity and that perseverance that I've been able to build in the real world. If it was like for me, Cornell was like a real world simulation, right? It kind of it challenged me to the max, but I knew I was like I wasn't in the real world, but I had that practice um there. So no, that preparation did help. And the exposure as well did help. So I would say, at first I was like, oh my God, my experience was not great because of that. But then I'm like, okay, it actually paid off. Because it helped with with my career, even if I didn't have as, a much of a social aspect as I wanted to, right? With all of I was a double major, so I had like a lot more responsibilities there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even feel like geographically, being in Ithaca, the bubble is reinforced both from
Yeah.
the school and then from the geography. You're
Yeah.
not getting lost in Ithaca.
Yeah. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's so funny. So I did want to conclude with some advice. So if you could give any words of advice to another fellow woman looking to build in the healthcare technology space today in 2025, what would you give them?
So advice for founder building in 2025, definitely build community, seek out resources, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think the biggest value, when building a company that you can obtain other than funding is your connections, and being able to hone in on relationships.
Relationships. I'm so glad I got to meet you because if I never did, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I know. It's all
Shout out
about
to them.
that network relationship.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Chrissa. This was a lovely conversation. It was an honor to just actually be able to sit down and talk to you, learn a little bit more about your experiences. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with the Creato community.
Thank you again for having me. Such a treat.
Of course. Well, I will speak with you soon.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.